So remember that video you sent me of the body language expert, Vanessa Van Edwards? So basically this video talks about what your, I almost want to say your resting face is, and then how people perceive you. And never in my life did I think about my resting face. I just go through life, It was so cool because she talked about the lines of your faces, and she has a natural downwards mouth line. I almost want to say, and her eyes also go downwards. And then I looked in the mirror and I was like, that's me. That's literally me. And you will definitely see in I think the last 3 episodes, I've been really trying to be smiling. But it really does look like I don't care what people are saying at the moment. And I'm like, no, I really do. I'm thinking very hard right now. Have you looked at your face though?
Yeah, well, I've known for a very long time that I have what's called a blank expression. I don't express with my face. So people read it either as sad or angry because it's a completely straight mouth, no eyebrow movement, nothing. And so I had to teach myself how to express.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's probably why people don't approach me when I walk down the street. Because they're like, dang, she looks very angry or very sad.
Yeah, if you catch me on a day where I'm super tired or something, I can't think about expressing. Trippy, my husband has to check in with me and be like, are you just not expressing? Or, oh yeah, sorry, let me put my face on.
Yes, so for all our listeners and for the people who do watch our YouTube videos, just know it's my face, okay? I can't help it.
I love getting into things like that, though, because you leak into your characters all that little tidbit information. And it's like, okay, Is this character just naturally bouncy and fantastic and always expresses super well? Or are they a little more clinical about it?
Alrighty, so I have my rooibos tea today.
I got myself chocolate milk, not hot chocolate.
It's just regular chocolate milk. Nice, yummy. Mm-hmm. Ready to get into this episode?
I'm so ready.
Hey ho, let's go. Hello everyone, and welcome to Tea and Tales. I'm Madeline Einau.
And I'm Sarah Sampson. Thank you to all of our listeners and viewers for tuning in each week. We especially want to thank Janet and Caitlin Miller. Now, today's episode, we're talking about getting feedback and how to interpret that feedback, which I think we've talked so much about beta readers and writers groups and all of that. It's all well and good, but if you don't know how to get the feedback and interpret it can be really, really rocky.
Very true. Very true. And I think your emotions can also play a big part in how you receive feedback. My first thing is if you are in a bad mood that day, don't look at your feedback. Just start with that one, because it's the same with writing. If you're in a bad mood, honestly, do not write, because it will, first of all, come through in your writing, and second of all, then you're just going to be more frustrated with yourself. It's just go take a break, go watch some television or go take a walk or something like that. Do not look at feedback when you are in a bad mood. It serves no one.
Or even for me, when I do my beta reader groups, I read their stuff during the week and they're giving me feedback. So I'm getting the little ding saying they've given me feedback on my Google Doc. And I refuse to look at it until the morning of the group, because I've discovered that if I am beta reading for them and looking at their feedback, I get so frustrated with their feedback, I get too critical of their work. And it's not fair to them to do that.
Interesting.
So, yeah, I refuse to look at it. I put it aside. And even when I'm done with theirs, then I'm tired and I'm stressed and I've been working. So I let myself sleep. Then I look at their feedback.
That is so interesting. My beta reading group, it would, let's say, give or take, we meet once a month. We first get together on a Zoom meeting, and then basically we talk about each person's 10K that they sent. So they would be like, okay, let's do Veronica's pages. And then everybody has their little tidbits about what they want to say about Veronica's pages. And they're like, okay, we're going to go to Barbara's now. And then we talk about Barbara's. And then only after we have the meeting, then we send each other our physical feedback that we gave each other. Just goes to show you, not every beta reading group is the same.
Yeah, because we get that feedback beforehand and then like ask specific questions about the things that confuse us.
Yeah. Well, here's my thing though. So we had our Zoom meeting and they were giving me feedback on my stuff. And my natural response when someone gives me feedback is always going to be negative. So I'm so glad we talked about our facial expressions at the beginning of this episode, because clearly my facial expression plays a big part in this beta reading group, because I would be sitting there listening to their feedback and I'm like, okay, I hear what you're saying, and I'm like making notes and stuff like that. And they're just like, why are you always so angry when we give you feedback? And I'm like, I'm not angry. I'm just, this is my face. Like, I can't help it. And they think I'm angry receiving their feedback, whereas I'm just like listening. At the back of my head, I'm like, oh, I have to go back and go edit that scene, which I do not want to do. Even though I do appreciate the feedback that I do get. But what I have noticed about myself is, if, let's say, for example, so in our writers group, we have the Pagapalooza, which is where you send your first 10 pages to someone if they would like to read it, and then they give you feedback. And so the first time someone sent it to me, I read it on my laptop and I read all the comments and I just immediately felt bad. And I was like, am I even a writer? I'm the worst writer that there is in the history of writing. Let's just throw this all away. Let's just throw my computer away type of vibes. And then the next day when I came back to it, I was like, wait, that wasn't that bad. Like, that was a fine comment. I was like, that's not too bad. So then I learned that when I receive feedback from someone, I open it up on my phone email. Then I read through the comments and then I let it sit. So then a day or two later, then I will go on my computer and then I will read the comments again. And then I'm much more relaxed. So that was quite a journey for me to, go on and discover how I receive feedback based, because I think that is also an important part of interpreting feedback. In all honesty, the first time that you do send out your pages to someone, or you do send out it to a beta reader or something, if it is your first time, you won't know how you will react to feedback, because there's a difference between asking someone, okay, do I look nice in this dress? And they give you feedback on that, versus sending someone your novel and then them giving you feedback. What you should learn is how you react to feedback and how it is the best way for someone else to give you feedback.
It's one of those things where you have to give yourself that time to feel it and not feel bad about feeling emotions about your feedback. Like, you need to give yourself off screen, away from other people, away from your beta readers, that time to figure out how you're reacting to it, how your emotions are connected. Maybe you've had a bad day, and so it's going to come back to you sounding more tough. Or maybe you had a hope and that hope wasn't realized. And so you feel all kinds of different emotions. I don't think there is a writer that I have read for or talked with who's had other people read for them who hasn't said that when they first read that feedback, it makes them angry, or it makes them sad, or it makes them
frustrated,
want to dig in their heels and, be like, no, you're wrong. It's my baby is beautiful, things like that. And it's okay to feel those things. It's okay to let yourself get through all of that emotion, because you put a lot of time and effort into what you send them. And so you'll have a lot of you in those pages. So give yourself that time to deal with the emotions and do it in a way that does not reflect back to those readers, because they're coming from a position of, I just want to help you and here's my opinions. Even if they might give it a little rough worded, they're trying to help. And so being able to do that away from them allows you to keep that relationship with them and the professionalism with them that you need to develop as a writer.
It's the same thing I think we've said about writers groups. Just because you decided to go with this writer group doesn't mean you need to stick with that writer group. And it goes the same for receiving feedback from a person. Just because you ask this person to give you feedback and they gave it to you doesn't mean, first of all, that you have to go back to them for your second, third, fourth, fifth novel to give you feedback if you don't find that the feedback they gave you helped you. Or you don't have to take every single feedback or comment that someone gives, because again, we are all different people. We all read differently. We all write differently. We all have different types of experiences. And in some way, shape, or form, we all read and give feedback in our own little blinders that we have. And so when someone's like, okay, I don't understand this, and this is not the way that you should be writing it, or this is the way you should change it, or stuff like that, then you're like, okay, Soups, thanks for that point of view, but I still feel like I want that there. So thank you, but no thank you. So I think it's also important to decide what feedback you are going to take and what feedback you aren't going to take. Because if I read your novel, Sarah, you are definitely not going to take every single comment that I give you and to be like, yes, now is absolutely correct. The other thing is also, I do read a majority of romance, but I also like mystery, and I also like crime and young adult. You as the writer should also keep in mind that, okay, Nell doesn't necessarily read fantasy, so that's why she doesn't understand this, whereas someone who does read fantasy will understand this. But then something else that she might have said, you could be like, oh, okay, that kind of makes sense because this character didn't grow as I thought she would have grown, or something like that.
It depends on what you're looking for from a specific reader. So like when I give Nell something that's fantasy, I'm looking for those moments where you say, this world building doesn't make sense to me. Because you're not going to assume things that regular fantasy readers are going to assume. And I can go, I wonder if I can tweak the language. And if I can't, because it's just she's missing it, she doesn't understand the tropes, she doesn't understand the specific language of that specific genre, then I don't touch it. But I know what I'm going to get from that reader. And so I know what to sift through. If I read a comment and my immediate reaction is, well, how come you couldn't understand that? Because I said this before. Then I stop myself and I go, okay, where did I say that? And is the wording there correct? Or I'll ask them. I feel like you're assuming XYZ. At what point in the reading did you get that impression?
Yeah.
Because sometimes the problem isn't right where they made the comment. Sometimes it's the chapter before or 3 or 4 pages before, where the way you phrased something put a vision in their head that is now tripping them up.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because I literally had that conversation yesterday with someone, and my first thing was like, I said it like 2 sentences ago. What do you mean you don't understand what I said? So, you know what? This might be a life lesson for me. Maybe I should just be like, okay, I shall take a step back, find my zen, and then I'm just gonna be like, where were you confused exactly? Because I feel like I said it 2 sentences ago.
Right, but what I found in doing that is sometimes they'll be like, wait, no, I read that wrong. You did write that, and I read it wrong. Okay, I don't need to fix anything. Or they'll say, well, it's right here because you said this. Oh, I used the wrong verb. I used the wrong noun there. I need to flip that sentence. Whatever little change it is, it fixes everything. Or they're just like, well, I don't know. It just kind of feels this way. But then everybody else is like, well, I didn't think that way. I didn't feel that way. It's like, okay, so maybe it was just that reader. And when we talk about that, my favorite thing to bring up is actually came from one of our writer groups, from Rebecca Paddock. And I don't know where she got it from. I think she may have got it from somewhere as well. But she says the rule of horses. Maybe it's because I love horses. She says, if one person tells you that you're a horse, say, huh, and go on with your life. If a second person tells you you're a horse, think about it. And if a third person tells you you're a horse, buy a saddle.
Eat a sugar cube.
Right, that's the same for our feedback, isn't it?
That's why I love beta reading groups, because you have one session, I almost want to say, where you get like 3 or 4 types of feedback from people. And if 2 people are like, this is where I found a problem, but the other 2 people are like, no, I didn't have a problem with that, then you're like, I feel that was just a personal experience that you were having, so I'm just gonna let that slide.
It's true, because sometimes when we're reading through our own rose glasses. And so, you know, I could read it again the next day and not have a problem with it.
Because also, if you are reading someone else's work and you are just in a foul mood, then you're also kind of gonna read your novel disgruntledly.
First, get through your emotions. Secondly, ask critical questions. Think critically about the feedback.
If you do, though, give people like a certain list of questions you want them to answer, like how would you then go about receiving that feedback? Because sometimes, like for example, I would be like, okay, did you like the antagonist? And in the back of my head I want them to say yes, but what if they come back and they're like no? Like, how would you deal with that?
That's a tricky one. So first I would say don't ask questions you don't want the answers to. And if you don't want the answer to it, ask yourself why. Do you already have
Ooh.
something in your head that is like, I don't want them to tell you that's wrong? Because you know in your heart you've done something not quite right here or something needs to be fixed there. If you can't figure out how to fix it, either don't ask the question, let yourself dwell on it, or ask the question and be ready to hear the hard answers because you have to break through those. And if you don't want the answer because you think it's perfect and you're afraid people are going to tell you it's not perfect, then maybe you need to ask the question to somebody who you feel safe with. Maybe a friend or a closer acquaintance of yours than just some random beta reader you picked up, because you can ask them differently. You can say, hey, I'm really worried that this isn't working, but I really hope it is. Can you please tell me how it came off to you? And let them then be like, oh, this one's sensitive to you. I know how to deal with your needs. You have to have a thick skin to receive feedback properly. And you have to be able to be humble enough to understand other people have different opinions. That doesn't reflect on you being good or bad. It only reflects on the end product that you are trying to make better.
It makes me think of the episode we had in season 1 where we talked about beta readers, and we had Rose Lawrence on, and she talked about when I was giving her feedback, and in the beginning she was like, no, but I like it, it fits there, okay? But then after a while, when she actually like took a step back and she was like, gosh darn it, Nell, then she actually found that it helped her. But yeah, this industry is definitely not for the faint of heart. And I think it is really something that if you do want to be a writer, if you do want to write novels and be published, you really have to sit down and be honest with yourself. Just the way that you're being honest with yourself about whether you want this feedback from this person. And to be like, okay, am I open-minded enough to receive feedback from people and not stray away from my story? Because I think a lot of times what does happen to authors is that they are so desperate to please everyone and to take all the feedback and put it in their novel that unfortunately their novel ends up being far worse than it was 5 edits before. You need to stay true to your story, to be like, you know what, this is my character, this is their arc, this is the plot, this is how I want them to feel things, this is how I want them to experience things. And whatever feedback I do get, if that feedback contributes to this story I have in mind and this idea I have in mind, by all means, I can shift something here, I can shift something there, I can put a comma somewhere else. But if it really affects your writing or a major plot point or something like that, then you have to, I almost want to say, be wise enough and know yourself and your story enough and be true to yourself to be like, you know what, I can understand where you are coming from with your feedback, but this is the voice. Each author has a different voice, and through feedback it is so easy to lose that voice, and you don't want to lose your voice because it's yours, and that is what makes you stand out from other authors, from other novels and books and stuff.
That was a huge one, especially when I started, that I had to discover, because I didn't know what my voice was when I wrote my first novel. I didn't know what I wanted it to be. And I've developed it a lot more since then. So my voice is a lot more clear now and a lot more in depth than it was when I first started. But what I learned about myself early on was that I'm very literary. I have almost a poetic cadence to the way I write things. And that's not normal in fantasy. So I've got this really strange voice for fantasy. And so I found readers who would be like, oh, you need to cut all of this out and you need to get to the point. You need to, be faster. And I'm like, but I love the imagery and things like that. And then I'd have other readers who'd be like, this imagery is amazing and I love the lyrical tone to your voice. I realized these people are my readers over here and these people are not. And so I could tune that in. And now when I query agents, if they say they like the literary, lyrical voices, I'm like, you're the one I need to go for. But also it made me start looking at the feedback I was getting differently. And when people would say, this feels like it's dragging right here, I would look at it and say, okay, what am I doing? Am I data dumping? Because I can edit that. Or
Mm.
am I being too flamboyant and lyrical? I can cut that, half of that out, and still keep that tone, still keep my voice, but pick up the story a little bit if it's dragging. And so you can't always take what people say at face value and think you have to change it to that person because everyone's going to have a different taste.
That's probably why I do not read literary fiction. I did not do well with poems and prose in school. I was like, that is not my vibe. No, thank you, Romeo and Juliet. I do have a friend who loves writing that. And I mean, I beta read for her all the time. Because, and here's the other thing, because I know that is the way that she writes, I don't comment on that. I look at different things because I know that is her style of writing. I appreciate the way that you write, and what you do write is beautiful. I just don't care because I'm like, that's way too flowery and I just want to get the quick action. I feel she will have another person who does love that and they will comment on those aspects of her novel.
We could probably do an entire episode on giving feedback appropriately because that
Mm-hmm.
is half of the battle.
Ooh,
When
we
you
should.
find somebody who gives you good feedback that is written properly, it's like a gold mine. It's like hang on to that beta reader with all your heart and thank them to no end because they've figured it out how to help you understand. But also, when you get that reading feedback, you have to be aware of who they are, like we talked about earlier, but also be aware of the way they're wording what they're saying. I have had a couple readers who only knew how to give me feedback if they rewrote what I'd said the way they would say it. Now, that is one
Mm.
of the biggest no-nos. You do not rewrite somebody else's work.
It takes away from your voice.
It really does. It messes with their plot lines that you can't possibly know where they're going after 10 pages.
Mm.
But when I get those feedback that's like that, where they have rewritten me, I look at that and say, okay, did the way they rewrite it mean the same thing as I said? Yes,
Mm.
I'm fine. They got it. They had to process it by rewording it.
Yeah.
It's not my problem. I wrote it fine. They understood it. So I'm going to put this on the side burner and see if anybody else comments.
Yeah.
But then I also look at, did they just say this sentence just completely confuses me? Okay. Is it because I missed a comma? Or is it because I have too many thoughts in a single sentence and I just kind of need to tweak all of that? Or are they confused about a plot line or a character arc that I need to fix before here?
One thing I have also noticed about interpreting the feedback that I do get is English is not my first language. And so I do write things a certain way because, I mean, South African English is different than your British English or your American English or Australian English or whatever. And so, yes, you do have your general sentence construction or your adverb and verb and noun and all those things. But it's just sometimes the way that I do speak, it's the way that I say things. And so then sometimes I do feel my voice is my South African English. It sounds weird, but I feel that is my voice. And so when someone does comment on it and give feedback on it. Sometimes I'm like, okay, sure, I could just move this word up there. It will say the same thing. It's fine. But then other times I'm like, yes, but yeah, no, that's how I'm gonna say this. Thank you very much. But this is how it's gonna be. No. I love using Afrikaans phrases and then translating them into English. So, for example, we have a phrase in Afrikaans that says, twee vliee met een klap, which when you translate it, it is two flies with one swat. What would you say to me would be the English?
Two birds with one stone. Yeah.
Exactly. So literally I would write in my novel, yeah, two flies with one swat. And they're like, what? They're like, no, that's not the phrasing. And I'm like, well, now it is.
As a fantasy writer, I'd be like, ooh, that's such an interesting cultural way to say that. Ooh, because I do that all the time. What's the phrase that I would use here? But what's the phrase they would use because their culture is different that I can just tweak it around and make it slightly
Well, I
different?
feel it's very more friendly to kill flies than it is, to throw a bird with a stone, like, honestly.
We all kill flies. Yeah, I
Pretty
totally do.
racist. I feel we do have listeners or authors who English is not their first language. So they would interpret feedback differently than someone whose language is English.
But I think if you take nothing else away from our episode today, please remember that feedback is difficult for everybody. It is hard for every writer to hear and to take in. You're not alone in that feeling and in that struggle. But there are ways that you can overcome those feelings, and there are ways that you can work through that feedback so that your novel is better at the end of it. Well, we like to keep things short here on Tea and Tales. Get your fingers back on the keyboard and your pens back on paper.
And if you like what we do here and you love the conversations that we have and the topics that we cover, go follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads at Tea and Tales Podcast, and on TikTok and Twitter/X at Podcast Tea Tales. Go to all the places that you can follow us and go comment and go share and go like and tell us what ways you have interpreted feedback and how it has helped or not helped you.
Happy writing!
Bye!